Hilchas Gzeilah V'Aveidah Perik Chi. Hagoizel karka michaveri v'ifsida. A person steals karka from someone and he was mafsida. Now the emes is there's no musig of stealing karka. When you steal karka, there's nothing really that happened. All what's happening is that you find yourself in someone else's karka shalei b'rshus. There's no din gzela like we learned before. But I'll call upon him, someone was goizel karka mechaveri and he was mafsid the karka kegain shechofer ba beire sichna ma'aris eshe kotzatz seilonis v'shichas zamayonis v'haris sabinyan, which the same din would be, let's say, if he wasn't gezel karka, a person goes into someone's karka and he goes ahead and he's chofer ba beire sichna ma'aris or kotzatz meilonis. The din, the fact that he was a goizel the karka and then he did it, or he wasn't goizel the karka, would be the zelbazach. So the din is when a person goes and does these hazekas, is chayiv lahamid libayis a sodak shehoyu b'shas gzela. The chayiv is to replace him with to have the original bias or the original soda as it was. Oy, the other option is yishal with the mei mashivsit. So the Rambam tells the is that the chayiv is to replace the item, and the other option is to pay for the money rather than replacing the item. So it sounds like the ikar chiyuv is to replace the item. It's not the ikar chiyuv is to pay the money, and you could, instead of paying the money, replace the item. Fakert. It sounds like the ikar chiyuv is to replace the item, and if you don't replace the item, you could give the money in order to replace the item, which is also negeya. There's a din legabi in Hilchas Tein V'Nitten that there's a machlekes Rambam Raivid over there. The Rambam says that if a person tainis to someone that you are mazik my karka and you're a meida b'miktzas, so since we're dealing with karka, by meida b'miktzas, by metaltalin, the meida b'miktzas is chayiv shua. Mashenkin by karka, meida b'miktzas is not chayiv shua. If someone says you owe me one piece of karka, two pieces of karka, and he says he's made on one piece of karka, so there's no chayiv shua on meida b'miktzas of karka. Now what happens if he tainas, you were mazik to me two things of karka, two bears, and he says I was only mazik one bear, so the Rambam says that's considered a meida b'miktzas in karka, and therefore he's pater mishvua. The Ravid says it depends. If he's money by him karka, so then it's considered a meida b'miktzas b'karka. But if he's not money by him karka, so then that's not considered a meida b'miktzas b'karka. The pashtus is when he's tiny, you are mazik my karka, you're basically money. So since he's basically money, so ein lachanami, the money came as a result of the karka, but lepel is basically money. So therefore it's considered a meida b'miktzas in money, not in karka, unless he muns by him karka. You have to understand. If how does he have the right to mun by him karka? But I'll go upon him. That's what the Ravid says. But so some want to explain that this Rambam over there in Teim V'Nitten is lishitasi over here, because over here we see that the Rambam tells us this did that when a person is mazik someone's karka, the seder advarim is chayiv lahamid libayis yisod. You don't have to mun. That's be'etzim the chayiv. When you're mazik someone's karka, you're chayiv lahamid libayis yisod. Or yishal with the mei mashivsid. The yishal meish b'ashivsid is became the bayis yisod, which you have to be minded. That's this din. And then you have to know, every mazik could be every mazik be'etzim. The chiyuv is to replace the item, but you have an option to pay money. Now, avol, that's the din is nachamal. The din is if a person is goizel karka, and then lepel he went ahead and chafer ba'beida sichnu ma'aris, or did other hazekas, so he has to pay for those. He has to replace the item or pay for the hezek. Avol nishcha somela. He didn't do it. He was goizel karka and lepel. It was nishcha somela kegen shishat fanor ein nisrfa be'esh yardim and hashemayim. Something happened which was beyond his control, and it happened. Is emale harishal cholofanacha? Why? Shakarka becheskas bailam kayamis. Be'emes, there was, as we said, there was never really a gzela on the karka. It's not when a person steals something, so there becomes a chiyuv hashava. And when there's a chiyuv hashava, you have to know if there was a shinui, so it's no longer kein shegazal memela. You can't be mechayev. You can't be mekayim the mitzvah of heshavas gzela with a gzela that there was a shinui. Mashenka my karkas ain't an gzela. There was no din gzela on the karka. So mela there's no chiyuv hashava. It's just if you were mazik, so you have chiyuv mazik. Mashenka if you were a gazlan and lepel something happened which was beyond, had nothing to do with you. So then, so now there's no chiyuv hashavas, no chiyuv hashavas. So you say arishal l'chol fanecha. It's not the same arishal l'chol fanecha when you're meishav is agzela. That's for example chomish avar of Pesach. Over there is a chiyuv hashava. The chiddush is that you can be mekayim the chiddush hashava with something which is worthless because it's a hezek shein and nikr. Over here the pshat of arishal l'chol fanecha means I'm not being mekayim chiyuv hashava. There's no chiyuv hashava. Memela, so you say arishal l'chol fanecha. Is emole harishu l'chol fanecha shakarka b'cheskes b'aylim kayamis ve'ein achrayis of say the olav elim can hifsid biyodi unless he did it with his own hands. Mashein adin came by metaltalin k'meisha b'yarnu. If a person by metaltalin and something happened in metaltalin, so then there is a chiyuv hashava and mepele he can't be makayim chiyuv hashava. So mele he has to pay back the money. Halacha beis gozel soda and then v'nigzla mimenu it was taken away from the gazlan. People that are mitzikim that make people uncomfortable. In other words, people bekeach hamelech they go ahead and steal karkois, and he went ahead and stole it. So Reuven stole the karka from Shimon, and now someone else took it away from Reuven. Someone took it away from Reuven. Mitzikim took it away from Reuven. People that take it away, like for the government, which is shalikadin, is imakas medina he ken shalakach hamelech sadis ibatim shekol anshi medina. No, this wasn't something which was specific for this gazlan. He went ahead and was taking away karkois. Again, it's your karka, and the mitzikim took it. The fact that in the middle I was trespassing on your karka is not going to make me responsible for the fact that the mitzikim took it. However, if the reason why they took it is because they wanted to take something away from this gazlan, so perhaps the gazlan did something wrong by going into this karka. Lepel, there was no maisik zela, but lepel, as a result of that, the mitzikim took it. So Mela the din is he's responsible. The reason why the Mitzikim took it is because the Gazlan was sitting there. It was the Gazlan's field, so to speak. In other words, it was Gozel biyodei. So therefore, Chayiv lahamed le'sod acheres. He has to be maimed le'sod acheres. Now this din is a knas. It's not pshat be'etzim. Be'etzim he wasn't a mazik. Be'etzim he just was trespassing there. And that wasn't really a maisik zela. And as a result of him trespassing there, that other person took the karka. So basically he was like a grumma that someone else should go ahead and take the karka. So he really didn't do anything. But nevertheless, since as a result of him it happened, so he gave him a knas that he has to pay for it. Halacha gimel. Onas hamelech is a gazlan. Va'omer le hari lanu kol ma sheyesh lecha. He forced him to say, I want you to show me all the karkos you have. And v'heres soda zu shegazel b'chlal sodesu. Because of the fear of the melech, he went ahead and showed all his karka, including this field. And lepel not la melech is also chayev lahamed l'sod acheres k'meisa. He has to give him back another field similar to this field. He has to pay the value of this field again because he was geirim. He was geirim over here. It was more than geirim over here. He showed him the field. He showed him the field, and he was, so to speak, gave it over to the melech, even though it wasn't really his field. He did it out of fear. But lepel he gave over to the melech this field. So memela he has to pay for the field. Halacha dalet. Gozel soda v'ifsida biyode, and he was mafsid biyode, so he has to pay, or he has to replace it. Is kshabalag soda gave as dmei ma shehifsid agazlan, is gave esam menchosim necherim. He could only be gave him menchosim necherim mipnei she kimil valpeh, and mil valpeh. The din is that you only gave him menchosim necherim. Mitzad, even though be'etzim a mil valpeh also really has a shibud on the karka. But misatakonis halakuches, so you only gave him menchosim necherim. Mipnei she kimil valpeh. Now that's talking about it because a mazik it has no kill. You know, the fact that he owes money is something that has no kill. However, v'im omad lagazlan bedin v'nis chayiv l'shalom, the nigzel was to veer the gazlan for the money he owes him, and Bezin paskin that he owes him the money. So here there was already a psak din of Bezin and v'acharkach mochar, and then the gazlan, which there was a psak din that he has to pay for the field, went ahead and sold his other karkois, and mele he doesn't have them. He originally had karkois, but now he sold it. So the din is gave him in a chosim shabadim. You could go to the lekuchas because after there was already a psak din, so it has a din as if it was a milva bishtar because it's yesh lekil. Before the psak din, it has a din of a milva al peh because it's elikil. Now everyone knows that he was a mazik and maybe you shouldn't take from those karkois. Mashenkin, once there was a psak din that he owes the money, so then if he goes ahead and sells that money, sells the karka, so that karka has a din of a shibud, and maybe you could go ahead and mon from the lekuchas. Halacha hey, gazel k'soda, and va'achol peiraseh, he was eating the peiros of the field. So again, when a person mashal steals a share, and he uses the share, we said beferish, you don't have to pay for the shtamshus of the share. Bepashas, the share had milk. So also, l'chura, you are gzeilah, I'm not sure about the milk, because maybe that's shvach, but I'll call upon, so knows, there's a din, but certainly if you use the soda, if you use the share, you don't have to pay for it. However, over here, gazel soda va'achol peiraseh, is mishalim kol ha-peiros she'achal min chasim necher. Again, you have to pay for all the peiros because those peiros really belong to the original nigzel. It has nothing to do with the gazlan. Now, Gzeilah V'Aveidah, the Gazlan was mashbiach the karka. So again, we learned by metaltalin, if you mashbiach the metaltalin, you take the be'ashvach. Whereas if you were pitma, you stole a kusha v'hishmina and you were mashmin it. So the din is, even though there was no yush, you go ahead and take the shvach from the nigzal. But over here, Gzeilah V'Aveidah is shamale yoseset v'yodeh la tachtena, and the Gazlan is yodeh la tachtena, which means ima shvach yeser ala is only neitel haitzah bilvad ben nigzal. So the nigzal has to pay the Gazlan for the dmei haitzah. V'im haitzah yiser ala shvach, and if the yitzah was more than the shvach, is ein lemiyatzah ala shir shvach. No, that's the din of yodeh la tachtena. Because the Gazlan really has no rights to this field. He has no rights to the field. He's a fremde person, as if mamash a fremde person. And therefore, if he ate the payers, like a fremde person ate the payers, he has to pay for the payers. And if he was mashbiach the field, so it's also like a fremde person who went and was mashbiach the field, shalei b'rshus, and the din is yodeh la tachtena. And what yodeh la tachtena means that ima yitzor yiseir ala shvach, he only takes from the shvach he only takes the hitzor of the mei shvach. He only takes mei shvach. Knows if he spent $100 and it went up in value of $50, he only gets $50. He gets $50 of his hitzor, which is keneged hashvach. And if he spent $50 and went up $100 fakert, so then he only takes also $50. Halacha vav. Now Gzeilah soda u'machra. A person went ahead and was Gzeilah a field and he sold it, and now v'hishbicha lekech, and the lekech was mashbiach it. And the lekech doesn't know anything. The lekech doesn't know that it's Gzeilah. He went ahead and was mashbiach the field, thinking it's his field. Now ima shvach yeser al hitzah. So he was mashbiach the field. Now the field is worth more than what he spent in order to get it to be worth more. In other words, he bought a field and then he invested $50 into the field, and now the field is worth $100 more. So the din is noitla hitzah mi balasoda. So the $50 he could take from the balasoda, because even if it would be a yered shlei b'rshus, he takes from the keneged for the hitzah. But the keren, which he paid to the Gazlan, and also the shara shvach, which if it would have been his, he would have been entitled to all the shvach. The whole thing would have been his. So the payel, he lost out. Let's say he bought a karka for $1,000, and now he invested into this karka $50, and now the karka is worth $1,100. So the payel, now the original owner comes along and takes his karka back. So the $50 that he invested into the karka, so the original owner has to pay it, because that's the hitzah. It's like a yered l'teich sada chaveri shlei b'rshus yodeh la tachtena, but at least he's entitled to the hitzah. If the shvach is yeser al hitzah, he's entitled to the hitzah. Now lepel, the $1,000 he has to go back to the Gazlan and take the $1,000 back from him, and he also takes back from him that extra $50 of shvach. He says, if it would have been mine, so I would have had $1,100. So now I got $50 from the original owner. I'm getting $1,000 from you, but I also want the other $50, which it would have been mine if I would have, if this wouldn't have been a stolen item. That's this din. Nachamal Gzeilah soda, a person steals a field, u'machra, and he sells it, and then the lekech goes ahead and mashbiach the field. Is ima shvach yeser al hitzah, so the shvach is more than what he invested into it. Is noitel hitzah mibala soda, and v'haker noitel im shara shvach min ha'gazlan. Side the keren, and side the shara shvach he takes from the Gazlan. Now hakeren is given menuchas mushabadim, because lepel he bought a field, so there was a shtar on this mechira, and this field was a field which was really a stolen field. So Memela, so the Gazlan becomes mishubed to reimburse him for the keren from his nechas mushabadim. In other words, his karka becomes, in other words, when a person goes ahead and buys a field from someone, you have to find out, did this person sell any fields till now? And if those fields weren't really his, if he sold the field, so Memela, so his karka is mishubed to that sale. So Memela keren is given nechas mushabadim. Ushara shvach, but the other shvach that he's taking also from the Gazlan, that he's taking menachos menachir. Now this whole din that he could go back to the Gazlan and take from him the shvach is only because he didn't know that it was Gzeilah. So since he didn't know it was Gzeilah, so Memela he's going back to the Gazlan and taking from him the shvach. However, if this buyer that bought it from the Gazlan realized that it was a stolen field, is the only thing that is entitled to from the Gazlan is only the keren. Umafsid shara shvach al yeser al hitzo, and the extra shvach, which he was mashbiach the field, he loses. He gets the hitzo from the nigzal. Because Lepel, he was mashbiach sada chaveri, he invested something in it, so he's entitled to the hitzo. But the shvach he loses. Now, hoisa hitzo yiseir al shvach, if he invested more than the shvach was worth, is bein sheikar ba sheigzula, bein shalei yikar ba, is in any case, ein le min hitzo el shir shvach. In other words, if he invested, he bought a field, and he went ahead and invested into the field, and Lepel, the field became worth less. In other words, it's not it didn't go up in value as much as he invested. So there was the hitzo was more than the shvach. So then is ein le min hitzo el shir shvach. He only takes from the hitzo the shir shvach. And who does he take that from? That is netel mi balasoda. That he takes from the balasoda. He takes from the balasoda the hitzo, which is shir shvach. And ba'keren netel min hagazl min chosm shabotim. And the gazlan doesn't have to really reimburse him for the hitzo, which was yeser al shvach. Later on, we'll learn that sometimes there is a musik that you have to reimburse for the hitzo, which is yeser al shvach, when he does it for you. Mashenkin over here, he did it for himself, so even though it was done as a result of the gazlan, but lepel, since there was no shvach, it was the hitzo, was yeser al shvach, so mele, even the gazlan doesn't have to reimburse him for the hitzo, which is yeser al shvach. And the shvach, which is keneged the hitzo, that's reimbursed by the nigzal. Halacha ches. Hagoizel soda umochra and v'achal aleker peirisa. Before we learned that if someone steals a field and he eats the peiris, he has to pay the peiris to the nigzal. Over here, he was goizel soda umochra and lepel ha'achal aleker peirisa. The buyer went ahead and ate the peiris. So mechashvanol of kol ha'peiris achal. So you make a cheshbon. How much peiris did he eat? Umishalmu balasoda. So he has to pay the balasoda. He was eating the balasoda's peiris. Unknowingly. He thought that it was his peiris because he thought he bought it. But in reality, it wasn't his fields. He was eating the balasoda's peiris. And now, now he goes back to the gazlan and he says, listen, you sold me a field. If it would have taka been my field, so then the peiris would have been taka mine, and I wouldn't have had to pay the original owner. But now that it wasn't really yours, so maybe it wasn't really mine, so I had to pay. So now I want you to reimburse me for this money. Just like you have to reimburse me for the shvach, which is yeser al hitzo. So the same thing, you have to reimburse me for the peiris which I ate. And again, just like the din is, that the gazlan has to reimburse the buyer with the shvach sheyeser al hitzo, which he didn't get from the nigzal. That's only talking about when the buyer was an innocent buyer. He didn't know that it was a gazlan field, and therefore he went ahead and invested in a field, assuming that it was his. But if he realized that it was a stolen field, so then the gazlan is not responsible to him to reimburse him for this money. The money that he paid the gazlan, even though he knew it was gazlan, he could take back from the gazlan. But any extra monies, in other words, side the money which is the shvach, which is yiseir al hitzo, and side the peiris, which he has to pay, which the shvach yiseir al hitzo he loses, and the peiris he has to pay for to the nigzal, he can't go ahead and mon it from the gazlan. Halacha tes. Hamoicher soda she'ena shalei. A person sells a field that's not his. Ein memkari memker. The sale is garnished. And v'likona likeach klum k'misha b'yana. Because again, there's no musig of stealing a field. There's no musig of stealing a field. So when you sell someone a field that's not yours, even if you're sitting in the field, but lepel is like selling someone the Brooklyn Bridge. It's like there's no real substance to that sale. Now, chazer agazlan acher shemochra v'locha mibalel. A gazlan goes ahead and knows the gazlan means he sold a field that wasn't really his, and now he goes after he sold it. He goes and buys it from the original owner. So the din is niskaima biyada lekech min agazlan. So we say that the reason why he bought this field now from the original owner is because he really wants that this sale that he sold it to the person that bought it from him should be a valid sale. And he knows that it was never his, but he wants it to be a valid sale. So the idea was like this. He sold the field to this person, or whatever he sold to this person, karka, and now he goes and wants to make sure that that sale is a real sale. How is it a real sale? He goes and buys it from the original owner. So really, l'chura, when he sold it, it wasn't that person's. He really sold it when it wasn't his. But on the other end, now that he bought it from the original person, we assume that he's buying it for the original person, in order for the original owner, in order it should remain by the buyer. And that's din number one. So we say that when a person goes ahead and sells it to someone, and it wasn't really his, and then he goes ahead and buys it from the original owner, we say he bought it from the original owner in order for it to become the buyer's. Now, Vafila Nosli Agazl Matana, he never really sold it to him. He gave it to him as a present. He stole a piece of karka, and then he gave it as a present. And then he goes and buys it from the original owner. Again, also we say, since he goes and went and bought from the original owner, is niskaim b'yad zeh shekibel matana. We say that it remains in the hands of the person that received the matana. Shemipnei zeh torach hagaz not shekana kedei lamed b'munasi. In other words, he wants that people should trust him. So mainly he went ahead and sold the karka. He knows it's not his, so it's going to go out of shmur that he sold the karka. It's not his. That's not be good for him. So therefore, he goes ahead and buys this karka in order for it to be that he's a trustworthy person. And when he sells a piece of karka, it's stuck in that person's. Because lepel, he makes sure that that karka should be his. Lefichach. So since the whole reason why we assume that the reason why he bought the karka from the original owner was in order for people to consider him a trustworthy person. So by medvar mamurim, if there was no court case going on yet, in other words, there was no big tumult going on about him being a gazlan. And the buyer is not moneying him to a dintera, making a whole tumult. But if the lekech, the buyer from the gazan, went ahead and was ready to veer the gazan, and then the gazan became mechuyev to pay, so this was already an established zach. And Bezin was already being machers on Nichsi Agazan in order to be able to give the lekech money. So they started saying that there's Nichsi Agazan, we're going to sell it in order to raise money to give it to the lekech. After this achroz already started, that's when Lokha Gazlan and Abaylim, that's when the Gazlan went to the original Bailim and bought this piece of karka which he sold, which was Gazel. So we say latest kaim we had the lekech. We don't assume that the reason why the Gazlan bought it now was l'tzerich halekech, because the bushes that he had already from the lekech he had already. In other words, he sold it to a lekech really Gazel, and there was already a ganza maisa, and then money from him, and there's already achroza. So what he's doing right now is not going to really save his face. So therefore, we assume that he's doing it for his own. Linus kaim v'yad lekech sheme'achar sheichriz on the chazov is nizgal l'sheini neman. Memele v'lei lokam and abaylim k'dei lahamid v'yad lekech in order lahamid nemanusi, like he said before. Over there, the pshat is k'dei lahamid nemanusi. We assume that he bought it k'dei lahamid nemanusi. Over here, it's not going to be lahamid nemanusi because everyone knows that he stole it. So memele, we assume that he bought it for himself. Halacha Yudalef. Locha hagazlim and habaylim achar shemocher shigzula. Because he went ahead and bought it from the bailim after he sold the shigzula, which we said before. So we assume that he bought it in order lahaimed et zebiyad lekech lamid b'nemanusei. Aber v'chazer u'mocher la'acher einosin matona hirisha. Right away, he went ahead and he sold it to someone else, or he gave it to someone else as a present, or he wrote it. Hirisha means he was meirisha. He wrote it in that tzavah that he's giving this piece of karka to one of his yorshim. So in other words, he went ahead and bought this piece of karka, which normally we would assume that he's buying it in order lahamid biyad lekech, but he immediately went ahead and sold it, or he gave it as a matana or hirisha. So the din is harigili daite she'ein eretzel amid biyad zeh shalachim imanek shoysik zula. So obviously the reason why he bought it wasn't in order lahamid biyad zeh of the person that he sold it to when it was exula, and memela. So therefore it's not considered his. So in other words, when a person buys something that's gzula, he didn't buy anything. He really didn't buy anything. There was no kinyan, he had no rights to it. The other person had the maganart, but on the other end, he has no rights to it. Now there's another din that if that person goes ahead and buys it from the original owner, so we could assume that the reason he bought it from the original owner was lahamida, he bought it on behalf of the buyer, and then it goes to the buyer. Now that din that we say that we assume that he bought it for the buyer is only talking about in a case where there wasn't yet achraza on the buyer on the gazlan's nechosim. So therefore, we could assume that this gazlan is still interested in buying it for the buyer in order lamid b'nemanusei. But if that's not there, so then we don't assume. Now that is if this person clearly was megaladas, that's not the reason why he's buying it, because he went ahead, or as soon as he bought it, he went ahead and sold it, or he gave it away, or he was meirish it. So then again, we don't assume that he bought it for that person, and therefore it doesn't belong to that person. That's how regila daitish ein reitza biyad zeh shalachim and shoyis gzula, and v'cheinem naflu legazan b'Yerusha. The gazan happened to be Yerush this item, and the gazan sold an item which wasn't his to a buyer, and then the gazan became a Yerush. In other words, he stole it from someone that he was really a relative to, and now that person died, so he was taka Yerush. But that doesn't make it that he did any effort in order to lahamid biyad hanigzal, biyad alikech. Halacha yud beis. Now gava hagazlan b'chevi lepel. The gazlan went ahead and mond this karka, and again he stole a piece of karka, he sold it to someone, and then someone owed him. The owner of this karka really owed him money, and he went ahead for the money. He was gova this karka b'chayva. Now the question is, that have a of buying it, or that is a din like nafla b'Yerusha? So it depends. Im yesh nigzal karka cheres, if there's other karkos that the nigzal has, and he stole it from the nigzal, and now he was gova from the nigzal b'chayva. Now, im yesh nigzal karka cheres v'amuli agazon zu anigeva b'chayva. I want after this karka. So he made an effort to make sure to get this karka. Is there reizim mischam lamida b'yad lekech? So we could assume that he's trying lamida b'yad lekech, and therefore taka belongs to the lekech. However, so there was no effort on behalf of the gazlan to make sure that this karka should be the karka that he's gave b'chayve. So then, his intent was lig b'schayve, not lahaim medakarka b'yad hanigzal. Halacha yud gimel. Nosnu habaylim legazl matana. So again, we have a few cases. We have a case where he bought it, a regular case where he bought it. We assume the pashtus, if there's no other factors, that he bought it in order lahaim b'yad hanigzal. We have b'yad alekech rather. We have a case where he yashened it, where again, over there, we don't assume anything, because there's no reason to assume that it was interested he just yashened it. So in Mela, it doesn't go liyad halekech. We have a situation where he was gova b'chevei. We have a situation where he's gova b'chevei, and over there it depends whether or not he had an option to take another piece of field, or he dafka took this field. If he had an option to take another field, so it's like he bought it. And if he doesn't have an option to take another field, so it's like he yashed it, because it was only ligbis b'chevei. Now we have a situation where the nigzal gave it to the gazlan as a matana. Nosnu abaylim legazlan matana. And now the question is it going to go to the lekech? So the din is kana lekech. The lekech was kenet. I lechurit. It's like he just got it, because the answer is she'ilu litarach lebaylim. Why did the baylim give him the matana? There must have been something that this gazlan did in order to cause the baylim, which he really stole the karka from him, to give him as a matana. If not something that the gazlan did for the nigzal, is lehoyin neslan matana. And why was he taka tereach for the nigzal in order to get up matana? Mipnei zeh Torah kedei sheyizka b'bedin. We assume that he was tereach something. He did something for the nigzal in order for the nigzal taka to give him the karka, and memela the karka is taka going to belong to the lekech. And v'yamid v'namanusei this guy b'yad lekech. So in these cases, when he bought it or when he received it for a matana, we say that it belongs to the lekech. Halacha yudalit. Hagoizel saw the person steals a field. So everyone knows it's a fact that this person, there was a person owned a karka, and there was someone that was strong, and he moved into that karka, and he's stealing that karka from the nigzal. Now he goes ahead. He went and bought it. There was a sale, and he bought it from the Bailam Rishon. But the original owner, which knows this gazlan, definitely there was a time he was a gazlan. We know there was a time he was a gazlan. But now there's a sale. There was a sale happened between the nigzal and the gazlan. Now the nigzal is tiny. V'toan nigzal v'amar onasa yisi b'shosh shemecharti olei. I didn't really sell it to him miritzeni. I didn't want to sell it. The whole sale was something I did against my will. He's a gazlan, and he insisted that I sell it to him, and therefore I sold it to him. But I really had no intention of selling it to him. So the din is leizocha gazlan. The gazlan wasn't zeicha. Even though there was a ma'isa mechira, and there's edim that there was a ma'isa mechira, and if not for the fact that we know that he was a gazlan, we would say that this is a proof that he bought it. But since we know that he was a gazlan, and this person is taining that this ma'isa mechira was ba'enis, So Mamela, you don't have to. So the Ma'aser Mechira is garnished. And if the Edom actually saw the Gazlan giving the Nigzal money for this karka, in other words, he actually paid him for the karka, is v'tavzer asodel l'bailam or marzirim l'gazlan adam mishnasin. So he has to return the money. So in other words, he katayna, he paid me for the item, but I had no intention of selling him the item. It's just he stole the karka originally from me, and now he's telling me, he's forcing me, so to speak. He says, I want to buy the karka, and I want you to sell me the karka. So I had no choice. I sold him the karka, but I really had no intention. I didn't want to sell him the karka. I didn't want the money. I wanted the karka. Now, b'medvar mamurim, that he has to actually pay back the money. B'sheidu edim shemana b'fnei misamaris. The Edom actually saw him sell it, and they saw the Gazlan giving the Nigzal the money. Avalim heidu. If the Edom are saying Edom shabala karka mocher legazlan. No, the bala. We saw the sale. We saw the actual Ma'aser Kinyan. And we also the Nigzal was moider. What happened was there was a Gazlan, there was a person who owned a piece of karka. Then someone came along and stole this piece of karka. So there's a Gazlan. Now there's a Ma'aser that this Gazlan is buying it from the Nigzal. There's a Ma'aser Kinyan from the Nigzal. And during this Ma'aser Kinyan, so there could be a Metzias where the Nigzal is actually getting money from the Gazlan. And at that point in time, where the Nigzal later on tinus, that it was all be'oinus, so then the Nigzal has to give back the Gazlan the money. Masha'enkin, if the Edom never really saw the giving of the money, the Edom only saw the Ma'aser Mechira between the Nigzal and the Gazlan. He was selling it to the Gazlan, and the Nigzal, during this transaction, or this seeming transaction, the Ma'aser Mechira, the Nigzal was made that I already got the money. I got the money. He gave me the money yesterday, and now I'm selling it to him. Now I'm making the Ma'aser Kinyan. And v'hanigzal tein, but the nigzal is taining. Shalei nosem li'adam. He never really gave me the money. Umach masira heidale. So again, since this person is an established gazlan, is ein legazlan kum. So even though they saw him selling it, they saw the nigzal selling it to the gazlan, and they also saw the nigzal being moida that he already got the money from the gazlan, and now he's taining that it was all a lie. In reality, he didn't want to sell it, and he never got the money. And the only reason why he did it was because this person was a gazlan, and he was an honest. So Mela ein legazlan klum, ela mitziyim imenu asoda b'lidomim, mipnei sheliheidele el mipnei apachet cheton. Hail v'huch ze gazlan. No, since this person was already a huch ze gazlan, it was established that he was a gazlan. Not that someone's thinking he was a gazlan. It was established that he was a gazlan. So Mela now this gazlan is tining that he. We see that he. Not he's tining. We see that he bought it. We see that he bought it, and we see that the nigzal was made that he got the money. But nevertheless, now that the nigzal is tining that it was a oines and that he really never got the money, so Memela, we say to the gazlan he should give back the field without money to the nigzal. Halacha tezay. Now, ein bala soda sorech lasis midah mechers. Now, there's a musig when a person sells something the oines. So if there's Edom that they saw the sale. So the eitzah is that the seller should go ahead and make a midah. In other words, he should go to other Edom and say, or to the same Edom, say, listen, I'm going to head and sell this karka. But you should know that the reason why I'm selling this karka is because there was an oinus. And he has to tell them, they have to know really that it's an oinus. Because if he just says it's an oinus and they don't really know that it's an oinus, so a midah doesn't work, like we'll learn the Hemshech in Hilchos Mechira. But the din is that they have to know that it's an oinus. But there has to be a mesiras midah. But over here, since the person that he's selling to is someone that was already an established gazlan, so when he tainas it was an oinus, he could taina it was an oinus without a mesiras midah. That's this din. Halacha tezayin. Ein bala soda tzorech lasis midah al mecherza. In order to invalidate this sale, he didn't have to make a midah on the sale. Hail v'hu zigzek gazlan al soda zu. So since this person is a gazlan and they in rayose baraya, and this person's raya is not a raya because we're always chayshish that maybe it was forced. So therefore we're saying even though he has Edom that there was a mechira, we don't help. Ein tzorech limsa midah. Ve'ein din gazlan kidin oinus es chavere v'tola es achim kule. There's a din that talyu v'zov zvini zvini. When a person goes ahead and forces someone to sell something, and lepel he sells it, and there was no mesiras midah, so the din is that it's a good sale. It's a good sale because talyu v'zov zvini zvini. Over here, ein din gazlan kidino eines es chavere v'tola es achiyim kule. Why? Shezeo eines ein reitzel ligzal. When a person is an honest a person forces someone to sell something to someone, to himself, so he's not interested in stay. He never stole it. He was never a gazlan. He was a person that we know he forced this person to make a sale. He forced this person to make a sale, but Lepel, he made a sale. He was Talyu of his own. He hung him up. He said, "Sell me this field." And Lepel, we say Agav that he was masking to the sale. So of course, he was masking, unless he was Mesa Midah. But if he wasn't Mesa Midah, even though we know it was an oinus, we say that it's a good sale. But that's because he was never a gazlan. Because when he got Shazel oinus ain't a reitzel, he never wanted to steal. He just was to force him to sell. Is mimkari kayim. So over there, even though we know it was an oinus, bekitzer, when a person sells something to someone ba'oinus, even though we know it was ba'oinus, it was done under duress, it was forced to do it, but nevertheless, if there was no mesiris midah, the mechira is a good mechira. That's talking about a regular person. Mashenkin, someone that's an established gazlan, so then even if we don't know that it was ba'oinus, faket, even we don't know it was ba'oinus, but his tainig was ba'oinus. So, and there's Aiden that saw the sale, they don't know there was Ba'inus, and there was no Mesiris Midah, but nevertheless, he has a Keach and Amonis to Taina that it was Ba'inus, and that he didn't accept the money, even though he was made that he did accept the money, and Mamela, the field goes back to the original owner.